So the loss of Malachi Nelson, is that simply a situation in which he was ready to stay there, compete for the job against Miller Moss, but basically because of just competing with Miller Moss, have a clear pathway to the starting position, and then once it was apparent that USC was going after a veteran quarterback to most likely win the job and bridge Caleb Williams to Malachi Nelson, that he wasn't necessarily up for another year of waiting?
Matt, you want to hit that first?
Yeah, I think, you know, he, like, Malachi Nelson could see that Lincoln Riley was going after a portal QB, you know, for this season, and he could put the math together. He could do 2 and 2. Also, like, if you read the Los Angeles Times, you follow Ryan Kartje, the USC beat writer. You know, he shared a quote from, not today, but like a few weeks ago, I think it was, where Lincoln Riley was talking about both Miller Moss and Malachi Nelson. And the way Lincoln Riley talked about Miller Moss was much more glowing than about Malachi Nelson. And that doesn't mean Lincoln Riley was throwing Malachi Nelson under the bus. He wasn't. But he did say, you know, it's a slower, longer process with Malachi Nelson. You know, Lincoln Riley also just alluded to the injuries. Like, this wasn't even, Lincoln Riley was not even being critical of Malachi Nelson. He was just acknowledging that injuries really slowed his progression. And so, you know, Malachi Nelson, if he had visions of being, you know, the guy who would take the baton from Caleb Williams, in many ways it was injuries as much as anything else that got in his way. But it remains that Malachi Nelson's situation was very different from what he had expected and hoped for. And, you know, I was out at the end of this regular season saying, you know what, you can't just ride or die with Miller Moss and Malachi Nelson in your quarterback room. You did need to go into the transfer portal for a proven quarterback, if nothing else, to at least make Miller Moss earn the QB1 job for 2024 and have to set a necessarily high standard of performance if he's going to be QB1. You know, at the very least, you have to have a proven guy pushing Miller Moss to a higher level if you're going to continue to entertain any thoughts about Miller Moss being the QB1 for the LSU season opener in Vegas in 2024. So Malachi Nelson could looked at that, and he pretty you know, simply arrived at that calculus where, yeah, I'm not going to be playing in 2024. I need to look at a different situation. So I can't blame the guy. And it also brings up the point that, you know, we get into discussions about how you develop a college football roster and how you develop a college football program through the portal compared to and balanced against how you develop your program on the recruiting trail. And I think we can pretty generally agree that of all the positions where, you know, getting a portal pickup is easier and in many ways more desirable than having to, you know, scour the recruiting trail. You can get at quarterback, you get that instant gunslinger, game changer, who can, you know, just by himself, by his presence on the field in the huddle, can dramatically change the equation. You know, and how many teams across the country have we seen, both for better or worse, you know, teams that did address their portal needs at quarterback, teams that didn't address their portal needs at quarterback? And how many teams are there where, you know, you can say, oh, if only they had paid attention to the quarterback spot in the portal, they'd be amazing. Like Iowa comes to mind, and a lot of other, you know, Nebraska comes to mind. You know, teams that have really good, solid defenses, but didn't have that quarterback, you know, to take care of the offense. So, you know, in terms of building a program, I think we all agree that offensive line is the position group where you do need to do it on the recruiting trail and through your internal development, coaching. Like, you can't just, you know, throw darts at the wall and hope that they hit the target. You need to be doing that stuff internally with your strength training, with, you know, getting guys to work together. Like, you need that 5-as-1 continuity on an offensive line. So you need to be bringing most of your offensive linemen up within the program. But quarterback is very different. Quarterback, you have a marketplace, and if you can find the right guy in that marketplace, you can instantly give your offense, you know, if not a makeover, you can address that one gap at that one very important position that can keep you competitive at a high level in college football on a relatively annual basis.
And, you know, Miller Moss is not a young quarterback. He's been at USC for years, but he's relatively green. He got the second half of the Stanford game, which was not very impressive, but he is a solid quarterback. He came in, you know, a high 4-star, highly recruited guy, and he has the ability to play. And let's see what he does. I mean, it's be interesting. Hopefully this offensive line can protect him so he can stand up long enough to show us what he can do with his arm. But that brings up one thing we kind of skirted around here. So I thought that you know, Malachi Nelson would hang out because he's got a whole nother year of eligibility. Miller Moss, this is it. You know, he's got one more year. And if he loses a job to Will Howard, and I can't see Will Howard coming over unless it's pretty much almost ordained that he's going to be the starting quarterback. Is Miller, I know Miller's a huge USC guy, but is he going to stay? I mean, so then that leaves you with Jake Jensen as your backup. You're rolling with two scholarship quarterbacks. And so I thought that you'd have Malachi hanging out as the optimal situation, going, okay, well, I have 2025. And this makes me wonder how feasible it is now that in 2025, Julian Lewis is coming, because why else is Malachi getting out? I mean, I get it. You want to be a starter, but, you know, you still have another year. You're the backup. You're one play away from being the starting quarterback. And that was going to be available to him, but he left. So it means, to me, it seems like he does not have that path in order to go. He realizes it now, and so I'm out. So that's one. On one note, it sucks losing a talent like Malachi Nelson, but it also means two things. One, and you never want to count your chickens for that, especially when the kid's in Georgia. But I mean, when you've got the #1 quarterback in the 26 class that might be reclassifying to the 25 class, and it looks more like that 25 class because Malachi, if you read the tea leaves, he's bailing. That might show you that Will Howard 24, and then maybe it's Julian Lewis coming here the next year. So it's interesting. I mean, seeing him leave, there's also been rumblings that he hasn't been happy all year. Lots of rumors and speculation that he thought he was going to be the guy, but like you said, Matt, he had those injuries that set him back. So again, very interesting to see how that's going to go down. Are we going to be stuck? Here's the thing: will we be stuck with Will Howard and Jake Jensen as the backup quarterback come spring? You know, that's a concern that we have to have. And is there probably another quarterback possibly in the spring that I might pull out of the portal if that is the case? But again, another problem for another time.
Will Howard is certainly a nice player, but he doesn't strike me as either the caliber of player in terms of what he's achieved at the college level, nor the high-level recruit, although he was the 13th rated pro-style quarterback, but not at the level that he had some type of entitlement coming in to his college career. He's had to fight for everything that he's gotten, that he doesn't mind. Hey, I understand that they've got a 4-star quarterback who has waited his term, and I'm going to have to battle him for the starting job. Maybe he was somewhat promised this job. I kind of doubt it, because I don't think he's at the level of that kind of player to demand that he would be starting at USC. I just think that he's used to competition. He's been fighting for a starting job at Kansas State against two other part-time starting quarterbacks, Skylar Thompson and Skylar Howard. I get them mixed up all the time. But and Adrian Martinez, of course, who came in from Nebraska. So he's accustomed to that.